Why does a super empath become a magnet again for the very avoidant who once pulled away from them? It's a question every heart has asked at least once, especially the one that still feels connected, even after silence and distance. When an avoidant leaves, it's not out of hatred, it's out of overwhelm. Closeness feels like danger to them, because intimacy awakens old wounds buried deep inside. And when they run, the empath breaks, believing their love just wasn't enough. But the truth is the complete opposite. When the empath finally steps back, when they go quiet, stop chasing, and begin to focus on their own healing, something strange happens. The avoidant's nervous system, which was constantly on high alert, slowly begins to calm down. And as it does, that same sense of safety begins to return, the safety that only the empath's energy ever provided. That same softness, that same patience, the same energy that once felt like a cage, now begins to feel like peace. And this is the moment when distance turns into a new kind of magnet. The avoidant begins to feel drawn back, not by physical attraction, not by logic, but by an energetic pull that comes straight from the heart. There is power in the empath's silence. There's a vibration in their stillness, a frequency that whispers to the avoidant's soul, "This was the person in whose presence I felt safe." And then, without anything changing on the surface, the avoidant starts to move closer again. Not for apology, not for control, but to touch that peace once more, the peace that only exists in the empath's presence. And perhaps that's the quietest kind of love, when someone returns, not because you chased them, but because your energy gave their soul a place to rest. In this video, we'll uncover the 4 deep psychological reasons why an avoidant finds himself drawn back to the very empaths he once pulled away from. The first thing that reattracts the avoidant is the calm of the empaths. The same calm they once found boring, predictable, or overwhelming slowly turns into a quiet longing inside them. When an avoidant pulls away, they truly believe that distance will bring relief. The empath's presence feels heavy, as if someone can see every layer of their emotions, and that kind of visibility terrifies them. To the avoidant, closeness means loss of control, and control is their only sense of safety. So they walk away, not just from you but from the parts of themselves that still crave connection. But after some time, a subtle shift begins. When their nervous system finally settles and their mind finds temporary peace, they realize that the real source of calm wasn't the silence, it was the empath. There was an energetic regulation happening all along, the soft tone of the empath, their grounded presence, their non-reactive love, it all worked together to keep the avoidant balanced. And now, with that energy gone, an emptiness starts to appear. On the surface, everything looks normal. They laugh, socialize, stay busy, but inside something feels off. Their body remembers the difference. The anxiety that once dissolved around the empath now begins to surface again. They can't quite explain the longing, but they start to reattract toward the same energy that once made them feel both peaceful and alive. The empath's vibration is imprinted in their system, and that frequency begins calling them back. At this stage, reattraction isn't a conscious choice, it's a body-level remembrance. The avoidant's nervous system remembers that calm the way a desert remembers the scent of rain, and without realizing it, they begin to move back toward the empath, not out of control or need, but out of an instinctive pull toward the only person with whom they ever felt safe yet seen. The second thing that reattracts the avoidant is the emotional depth they once took for granted. When the avoidant takes space, they return to their familiar world, the world of surface-level conversations, predictable smiles and light, effortless connections. At first it feels easier, no intensity, no emotional exposure, everything feels safe, manageable, controlled. But as the days pass, that safety starts to feel hollow. There's a quiet emptiness that begins to grow inside them. They laugh at the right times, say the right words, but nothing truly lands. They start to notice that people listen, yet no one hears them. People talk, but no one feels them. The subtle emotional synchrony that once existed with the empath is nowhere to be found. The avoidant begins to realize what they had wasn't just attention or affection, it was emotional recognition. The empath didn't just respond to words, they responded to the unsaid. They noticed the hesitation in a breath, the shift in tone, the silence between the sentences, and that kind of depth is rare, almost sacred. Now, in the absence of that emotional mirror, everything around the avoidant feels flat. Interactions that once distracted them now feel like background noise. The lightness they craved starts to feel like emotional starvation. Somewhere deep inside, their subconscious begins to ache, not for drama, not for comfort, but for meaning, and that meaning existed only in one place, in the space where the empath's presence made them feel understood without explanation. They won't say it out loud. Avoidants rarely do, but their body, their dreams, their thoughts start circling back to that emotional gravity. They might check old messages, revisit memories, or suddenly wonder how the empath is doing, not out of curiosity, but because the connection was never just emotional, it was energetic resonance, and once a soul has tasted that kind of depth, the surface world loses its flavor. No matter how much they distract themselves, the contrast keeps pulling them back. That's the invisible gravity of the empath, the one that doesn't demand, doesn't chase but quietly calls, and for the avoidant, that call becomes impossible to resist, because it's not just love they're re-attracted to, it's the depth that made them feel alive. Then comes the third magnet, energetic familiarity. No matter how logical or detached the avoidant tries to be, there's something about the empaths that goes beyond logic, beyond reasoning, it's soul-level recognition. When the avoidant pulls away, they tell themselves it's over. They convince their mind that distance equals freedom, but the body and the energy field don't obey the mind that easily. Even in separation, there's an invisible thread still humming, a soft pulse that connects them to the empaths. It shows up in strange ways, a sudden wave of nostalgia with no clear memory attached, a dream that feels too real, a thought of the empaths out of nowhere at 2 a.m. It's not coincidence, it's resonance. Two energies that once intertwined don't just disconnect, they continue to echo through each other's frequency, and when the empath begins to detach, not from pain but from acceptance, something powerful shifts. They stop chasing, they stop overgiving, and their energy becomes lighter, cleaner, grounded. In that moment of healing, the thread between them purifies, it stops being heavy and becomes magnetic. Now the avoidant, who once ran from that intensity, starts to feel the pull again, but this time it feels different. It's not the suffocating emotional closeness they once feared. It's calm, mature, balanced, and their soul recognizes it instantly. They might not have the words for it, but they feel it, in their chest, their dreams, their silence. It's that subtle yet undeniable sense of being seen from afar, like an echo of home they can't quite forget. And because avoidants are more sensitive to energetic shifts than they admit, that recognition begins to stir something deep within them. They find themselves revisiting memories, not for comfort, but because the frequency feels alive. They sense that the empath has changed, and that shift draws them back. It's as if their soul is whispering, something about this connection still matters. Reattraction at this stage isn't emotional or physical, it's energetic remembrance. It's when two souls who've danced in chaos suddenly find harmony again in silence. And for the avoidant, who's always chased control, not connection, this silent, wordless familiarity becomes the most magnetic force of all. And finally, the strongest wave of reattraction happens when the empath stops chasing, when the endless giving, explaining, and emotional pursuit come to a silent halt. That's when the entire dynamic flips. In the beginning, the avoidant held all the power. They decided the pace, the distance, the timing. The empaths waited, hoped, reached out. But once the empath heals, that energy dissolves. They stop needing closure. They stop performing love. They no longer orbit around the avoidant's moods or silences. Instead, they retreat into their own calm center, not as a strategy, but as self-respect. And suddenly, the avoidant senses the void. The energetic field that once overflowed with the empath's warmth is now quiet, contained, untouchable. That shift disturbs the avoidant's internal balance, not because they crave chaos, but because they've lost the emotional predictability that once kept them comfortable. Now the empath feels like a mystery. The very person who once reacted to every silence is now serene, unavailable, self-contained. It triggers a psychological curiosity. How can someone who felt me so deeply now feel nothing? That question becomes the hook. It challenges the avoidant's ego, but it also awakens something older and deeper, their unhealed longing for safe love. They start checking social media, revisiting memories, testing subtle ways to feel that connection again. But what draws them back isn't attention, it's uncertainty. The empath's stillness becomes magnetic. their detachment, intoxicating. For the first time, the avoidant isn't escaping emotion, they're chasing it. This reversal is where true reattraction begins, because the avoidant no longer sees the empaths as a giver, but as someone complete within themselves. And that self-contained peace carries a rare power. It's not needy, not performative, not chasing validation, it's simply presence without pursuit. That energy confuses the avoidant at first, then fascinates them, and eventually pulls them in. Not through emotional demands, but through mystery, the unknown. They find themselves drawn to the same peace they once ran from, because now, the stillness that once scared them feels like freedom. And that's the ultimate irony of reattraction. The avoidant returns not to claim the empath, but to feel the balance they once feared to hold. Reattraction is never a trick, it's an energetic transformation. It's not about playing hard to get, going no contact for strategy, or waiting for the avoidant to finally realize your worth. It's about becoming the energy you were once trying to give. When the empath stops chasing and turns that same intensity inward, everything shifts. The love that was once desperate to be seen now starts healing itself. The focus moves from them to me, from proving your value to embodying peace, and peace is powerful. It's not loud, it doesn't beg, it doesn't perform. It simply radiates an energy that the avoidant's nervous system remembers, an energy of calm, compassion, and emotional safety. That vibration becomes magnetic again, not because the empath is trying to attract, but because they've returned to alignment with their own self-worth. When that happens, the universe responds. It reorganizes circumstances, and often, almost poetically, the same avoidant who once ran from that love finds themselves quietly drawn back to it. But this time they're not pulled by chaos or control, they're reattracted by peace. That's the beauty of real transformation. You don't chase energy anymore, you become the kind of energy that everything safe, soulful, and meant for you naturally returns to.